Good evening, good afternoon, whoever you find yourself in this weird, wild, wacky world of ours, and welcome to the exciting installment of Dragons in Dublin. Stairs, particularly in old buildings, have this odd habit of twisting away from you. Also, your footsteps tend to leave unpleasant, echoing noises as you place one foot in front of the other to climb them. Francis Beaumont finds himself ascending just such a set of stairs as he walks up the flight of twisting stone steps that lead to the belfry in St. Colum's Church, Rathfarnham, the place where the Seneschal has said that he will take a short meeting with the sheriff this evening. The wind whips around you as you step out into the open air of the belfry proper. The large bell sitting just a few meters away from you. Its mechanical mechanism now quiet for the evening, though the great hammer looms as if about to strike. The Seneschal is not here yet. However, you, being the judicious little Toreador you are, arrived 5 minutes early. So.
The sheriff, for his part, simply wait patiently, kind of taking in and carefully inspecting the aesthetic of this building. More or less taking this time to silently judge his surroundings and assess whether they meet his rather exacting expectations for formal meetings, which of course they never really do, as this is a Toreador of several centuries worth of age, and as such they can never really be satisfied regardless of what they are given. But that is largely what a sheriff does while he waits. It should be noted he has come unarmed, but dressed in somewhat his conventional casual yet fashionable attire, fairly minimalistic. And simply waits and takes in his surroundings.
Dong. 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 The clock strikes 3. At which point, as it finishes its tolling, you hear from behind you, "Good afternoon, Mr. Beaumont."
The sheriff turns on his heel. As he sees the Seneschal once more, and simply does a polite bow to him. My good Seneschal, a pleasure to see you again.
Once again, Seneschal is quite a lot shorter than Francis. He stands only about 5'3". But he's dressed in a black robe-like coat with the hood pulled up over his head, and the skull or the white mask affixed his features. Obviously, the only really blatantly supernatural thing about him is the fact that you cannot see, even with all of your auspex, you cannot see his eyes through the shadows of the mask. They are piercing, even as you attempt to pierce them. It's as if you are looking into swirling darkness. But the Seneschal will give you a head nod before he'll say, "I've always found this building to be rather beautiful, overlooking the entire city as it does. Wouldn't you agree, Mr. Beaumont?"
It's quite the vista, yes.
I often this when you have an eternity, and you'll hope you'll forgive me for waxing poetical. When you have an eternity, it's easy to forget that beauty can exist all around you in the most simple and mundane of places. We look for it in other things, art, sculpture. He looks you up and down, like the head goes up and down. Fine clothing. But in the end, nature provides if you're merely willing to look for it.
Perhaps, although I'm not sure if I'd call a view of the city nature providing.
No, I think it is. It is human nature providing. Humans have their odd ways, don't they, to build, construct, make things from nothing, and that is why they must be respected, I suppose. But I don't suppose that you called me here just to listen to an old man prattle on about hither, dither, nither, and yon. So he kind of leans against one of the large pillars that holds up the belfry, and he'll say, "What can I do for you?"
It's in regards to my investigation upon the attempted hit upon our good Archon. I've made some significant progress, but now I find myself at something of a worrying crossroads. Some of the information I've uncovered is potentially quite concerning. I'm hoping that it's nothing more than a coincidence, but I feel it should be noted. Ever since the event, one of the first things I did was pay the good Giovanni a visit after you and your clan unearthed various information about the human hit squad.
I see. I have a question for you. Did you go visit the Giovanni before or after some pisshead Malkavian decided to break their domain and break the silence of the blood in the presence of the Giovanni?
They were very respectful to me, so I'm going to assume before. Although I did meet them after Ivanov had endangered one of their own and have come to me requesting it to be investigated and themselves compensated for them being misled on the deal themselves and Ivanov struck.
Continue with your story. Why is there ukulele music playing in the background?
The ukulele follows Francis wherever he goes.
Do you actually have a thing? Because every time we see, do you actually have a thing for ukuleles?
I'm going to say no, and that the ukulele is clearly just a figment of your imagination.
Continue.
Too many Markavians. The Giovanni aided me in monitoring where the transactions of the account that had paid the hit squad were going to. One of these transactions led me to the Emerson Keyfrare Book Emporium. He smiles.
Ah, yes, this would be when you inadvertently, but through, shall we say, goodliness of forethought, broke the domain of a senior kindred in the city and attempted to invasively and perversely read his mind.
In my defense, I did attempt to ascertain that he was a mortal first, but he disguised every aspect of his being and left me none the wiser. But the mistake was made. I've apologized for it, of course. I'd like to note it was made under my duties as the sheriff. If I had known in advance that it was a kindred domain, I would have not gone about affairs as I had.
I quite understand, which is why I'm only going to do this here. He punches you straight in the face. With potent 7. That he is activating.
Oh. Okay. I have 8 dot fortitude. It's now potent 6.
Are you ready for a crap load of bashing?
Yes. Just for safety's sake, to ensure that he does not inadvertently decapitate me. Because I'd hate for him to inadvertently break the tradition of destruction.
It's not like, it's not like you hold this up or anything, but yes, continue.
I will boost my stamina and my fortitude, so I'll be at stamina 7, and I'll automatically soak 1 of this, and if nothing else, that should reduce the damage enough after it is halved that I do not die horribly.
Well, that's 6 successes on his punching.
Oof.
The big. To be fair, you did break a senior kindred's domain. Just saying, a
You
punch.
didn't tell me.
I know, but a punch in the face is getting away lightly.
This is also true.
Hang on. I actually have to roll his damage now.
Yeah. I should also do a hunting roll after this as well.
Yeah, that's valid.
I know I have enough blood to do all this just by standard, but
Okay, so that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 plus 7 is 13. 13. Because vampires half bashing damage, don't they?
I think they half. I'm not sure if it's after or before. I think it's after. Because I've had times where the damage has been reduced to 0, just because their damage is reduced to 1 and it gets halved and rounded down. So I think it is after soak.
Okay, so roll your soak.
Okay, so it's 13 damage. I automatically soak on, which puts me down to 12 bashing damage. Jesus fucking Christ. Oh, okay. So I soak 5, so that's pretty good, to be honest, considering I'm rolling 7 dice. So it reduces it to 7 bashing. It's then halved, and
it's then halved and rounded up, I think, because in vampire you generally round up. So you would then take.
Let me double check, because I think for bashing damage it's actually round down, but I'm going to double check. I think you can reduce the damage to 0 if you get it to 1, because I've had times like that. I could be wrong. I do just want to double check. I just need to find bashing damage. Yeah, any bashing damage applied to a vampire is halved, brackets, round down.
Okay, correct. Okay, so in that case, you will take a grand total of, so it'll go down to 7. So you will take a grand total of 3 bashing damage. Pow!
Ow! That fucks up his nose. Really badly. And probably a cheekbone. Stop ruining this pretty man's face.
Yeah, but good God, you could feel the potence behind that.
Yeah. Yep, and Francis does see it coming and goes all out to kind of at least absorb the impact, and it's still really badly damages his face. You know, kindred don't bleed, but a bit of blood probably ended up just spurting out from the impact, from his nose being contorted. and his left cheek being partially caved in. I'll just make a quick hunting roll. It's difficulty 9 minus the main level.
Mm-hmm. And plus any hurt you might have.
Okay.
And if you want to spend blood for discipline.
Oh yeah, it's is it extra dice that hurt give you in this game, or is it just extra blood?
It's extra blood.
Okay. Go on, add those. Will just be
Because you start with a basic 5 plus your hurt rating.
okay. Because I spent 4 blood, and I had. Okay, yeah, I really should be hunting then. Oof. Can you hunt a second time?
No.
Okay, that's good. I'm gonna get 2 successes then, which actually only gives me an additional blood. But that doesn't actually. That means I'm still not hungry, just barely.
Okay. But yes, so, ow, my face.
Ow. Yes, I'm just quickly tallying up my blood. It is.
Also, what path is Francis on?
Oh, Francis is on humanity, like most good right-thinking Camarilla kindred.
So you're like the worst answer ever. Okay. I'm only joking.
Come now, not harsh.
Not wrong. Would you feel offended enough by a smack in the face to warrant a frenzy check?
That's what I was gonna say. The kind of shock of it and the bluntness of it, and the fact that, yeah, this guy's a lot older than him, but he is the sheriff, and he did feel, as much as he apologized for his actions against Glenn, he felt like they were justified.
Yeah, make me a frenzy roll difficulty 6.
Yeah, like this, like the sheer shock and like why it's happening. I'll probably just spend a willpower on this, but I will make the check regardless. I get 4 successes total, so angry but very good at keeping it in.
I respect the fact that you are a forthright, straight-thinking individual. However, invasion of the thoughts of your elders, even if you thought you were doing it for the correct and meritorious duty and service, did you even bother to check before you decided to invade the mind of this individual if he was one of us? Did you?
He takes a moment when he's kind of looking down, blinking rapidly, and obviously his face kind of changes rapidly as it kind of processes the pain and the sudden onset of the aching and the fractured bones. As he then puts both his hands over his nose and then just kind of snaps it back into place, and just kind of shakes his head once as if to power through, and just goes, "I won't make excuses on that front."
Once again, this is why the punishment was light. Because in theory, you were doing it for just a noble reason. However, if I let you walk away without chastisement, then, frankly, I wouldn't be doing my job, would I?
We all have our image to maintain.
Indeed we do. So, I have already been communicated via my old friend Mr. Heavyside exactly what it is he told you, because he did not realize it was of importance. And you're concerned because, let us phrase it bluntly, the address in question lies at the heart of the prince's domain.
Precisely.
So, ask me the question, Mr. Belmont, that you've been pussyfooting around. Do I think that the prince had any involvement in the little kerfuffle as it was presented, your Archon?
That is the question I came to ask, as sheriff though I may be of the domain, I haven't been here for a particularly great deal of time, and I do not know the prince as well, say, that you do. And while I would very much prefer and to some extent believe that he had no involvement at all and that this is a misunderstanding or a deliberate attempt at a setup from an adversary that is clearly very good at covering their tracks, I still have to confront that possibility.
Of course you do. Let me be frank with you, Mr. Belmont. Justin Thrain, Prince of Dublin, is a cunt. He took a seat that was rightfully mine because his grandpappy is big and powerful, not because he is necessarily anything worthy of the writing home about. So, here we are today, and I am a loyal servant to the Camarilla, and I had no wish to embroil Dublin in a civil war for the throne, because that is what would have happened, Mr. Belmont. There would have been a civil war, the city would have broken down, my supporters, his supporters, and there would have been blood in the streets. And no one wants that in a fresh domain newly wrested from the control of the Sabbat, do they?
No, you made the most responsible decision.
Indeed, I did. So, as to do I believe the prince had anything to do with the assassination of your Archon, the answer is only if he was ordered to from some other Ventru on high. Because let's phrase it like this. If someone, for example, like Mithras, wants you put in the ground, you're put in the fucking ground. That's just how society works. Do I know if this is the case? I don't.
No, one thing I haven't been able to uncover so far during my investigation is other motives as to why this individual wanted the Archon out of the way. I'm clearly closing in on who it is, but until I do, there isn't actually much information I found to ascertain who it was.
That's a very simple question, Mr. Belmont. Even if you look at it from its most base common factor, this does not necessarily need to have been the grand motivation. However, look at it from a simple perspective. Killing an Archon in this domain would have drawn the ire of the entirety of the Camarilla, crushing down like a fist. So, it would have destabilized the princedom. The prince, on the other hand, might be cleared via this logic. He would have no interest in destabilizing his new and shiny dominion. And that's what would have happened. The inner council would have torn this place apart, stone by stone, brick by brick, until they found the culprit. They tend to be very antsy when their direct representatives are called into, when their direct representatives are murdered.
Oh, I am very much aware. That then does change the nature of the question: who other than the prince has access to his domain that they can attempt something like this? Ultimately, I'm going to find out either way, so perhaps it's a rather short-sighted question.
Indeed. As to who goes in and out of his domain, I don't know. I've never kept tabs on it because that would be unseemly of me. I am a servant, after all.
I'm not sure if Francis should roll perception empathy because I'm not sure there's any circumstance in which he'd believe that statement.
You can disbelieve it if you'd like.
Well, you Nosferatu. Anyway,
Oop, I'll be back in just 2 seconds. I just need to grab my laptop charger.
Ultimately, I need access to the prince's domain in order to investigate this issue. But I also don't want to incur the same mistake that occurred with the good elder Heaverside. He was a very cooperative gentleman even after the slight, which, I must say, impressed and humbled me somewhat.
Sorry about that. There we go.
Yeah, Francis is just saying. Ultimately, he needs access the prince's domain in order to resolve the issue. But he didn't want to. If the prince was implicated, he didn't want to tip him off, and he didn't. But at the same time, he didn't want to incur the same mistake that occurred with the good elder Heaverside, who even after the slight was very cooperative, which Francis added did humble and impress him, as it was unexpected.
Indeed, he suggested that you have to join us for a game of chess on some moonlit evening.
Francis thinks. Well, I suppose I'm going to have to teach myself some gamecraft then.
Right. This question must have an answer. So what I'll do is, I will help you get into the prince's domain on the quiet. I'll send one of my men with you, and they'll sneak you in and sneak you out.
It is vastly appreciated. I know you and your subordinate are not doing so without significant risk.
I believe in the Camarilla, Mr. Beaumont, because I've seen what happens sans the Camarilla, when it is people think that they are free in order to brutalize, murder, and kill indiscriminately at what might seem to be random. So I much rather the opposite be true. I like law. I like order. I like the ability of people to while away their nights, their eternities, in whatever way they see fit, as long as nothing comes burning to the ground. And that's what I've dedicated my unlife to, Mr. Beaumont.
It is good to hear we are of like minds.
Very well. I have your cell number. I'll contact you when it is that I'm able to secure the necessary provisions so that you can, well, do your duty.
Let us hope that this is all a giant misunderstanding. And that none of this was necessary to begin with.
In that case, Mr. Beaumont, I'll bid you good evening.
Likewise. Thank you for this meeting and for your assistance.
Oh, one thing, Mr. Beaumont.
Francis.
If we get...
Francis kind of looks towards the Seneschal.
If we get you into the domain, you're going to be crawling in shit. I'd dress accordingly.
There's a pause where Francis just looks up. His eyes close briefly for a moment. The slight hint of a pained look. Although it's a bit difficult to tell whether it's from his facial wounds or the announcement, perhaps the one moment where his wounds are more of an advantage. And then just kind of bobbles his head. Well, it would not be the first time in my years.
Wonderful. I find that Toreador tend to talk more shit than they tend to crawl in it, but then again, we all have our place, Mr. Beaumont.
I'm a soldier first and foremost, I always have been.
Good. We'll have to put that statement to the test.
Oh, it will be tested, and I'm sure this won't be the last time. He kind of looks rather poignantly at the Seneschal.
Good day, Mr. Belmont.
And good evening.
And with that, we shall end our scene. Thank you, player, for playing. Thank you, watchers, for watching. This has been another Scene in Darkness in Dublin. Have a pleasant evening.